Welcome to the All Things Circular podcast, your gateway to the circular economy. Hosted by industry experts Victoria Darcy and Rich Bolger. Every episode is proof that circularity isn't just good for the planet. It's a smart business decision. Our mission is simple: to empower, to inform, and to show you how to make the circular economy work for you.
Hi everybody and welcome to the All Things Circular podcast. I'm Vic Darcy.
Peter Evans.
So we're coming to you live from Las Vegas, and Peter, I keep bringing my British brethren in.
I know.
So I'm delighted to have with us Ben Daniels from Foxway.
And I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for having me.
Ben, thank you so much for giving us your time. Ben, would you like to tell our listeners sort of who you are, what Foxway is, what Foxway Circular is?
Yeah, so hi, my name's Ben. I'm from Foxway Circular, specifically out of the UK. I run a division called Smart DPK, which is responsible for our Microsoft authorised refurbisher program, and that's supporting over 500 plus refurbishers in over 50 countries now, to reload Windows, licensing, keys, activation, all that good stuff.
So just before we go any further, can you explain the difference between a license and a key?
Yeah, very good question. The analogy that we always use now is, if I said to you, you go into an estate agent and you get given the key to a house, and someone said, here you go, here's a key. And you take that key, you go into the house, you live there, you move all your furniture in, and then someone rocks up the next day and they say, what are you doing in my house? And you go, well, I've got the key. It's like, but you don't have the deed and the right to be there. So the difference between having a key and Windows being activated versus you having the correct license to use the software, or in this case, sell a device with the software on it. That's the kind of analogy that we use. So, yeah.
So it's just quite interesting because people can get lost in the terminology at times, right?
Yeah.
So, in terms of so there's two elements to Foxway. So you've got Foxway, which is kind of the refurbisher. So, in terms of circularity, Foxway bring in the devices, fully refurbish them, and then your division created Smart. Now, do you want to tell our viewers just what Smart is? Because it's really, really clever, and how it came about.
Yeah, so Smart came about, it was an internal problem that we had. So years ago, I'm sure you all remember back when laptops and desktops had a physical sticker on the device.
Yep.
And it was the code that you entered to activate Windows. Microsoft a few years back said, we're not doing that anymore. We're not playing around with stickers. We are going to make it all digital. And they thought it would be a good idea. And it is in principle. But what they forgot about is that to be able to use digital keys and send the reports back to be compliant and activate the devices, you've got to have a server at every facility where you're refurbishing and licensing devices. You've got to have the tools to be able to do it, the scripts, the people to understand what's going on. So it kind of landed on my desk, and someone said, look, to set this up in each Foxway facility, it's a 30-page document that you've got to learn and kind of get all the servers set up, integrate with Microsoft. And I said, this isn't going to fly. So what we did was we solved the problem in-house by creating what I like to call MaaS, which is middleware as a service. We all know SaaS, software as a service. So we kind of sit as a layer between Microsoft and the refurbisher, or in this case, Foxway. And we basically take all of that complicated stuff and we do all that stuff behind the scenes so that the refurbisher can focus on what matters most to them, which is scaling, automating, and being compliant.
Yeah.
So
and velocity, right?
Yeah. And that's why we kind of coined the phrase, it's a bit cheesy, but built by refurbishers for refurbishers, right? So we understood and fixed the problem in-house. And then we were like, let's make this available to all the other refurbishers.
So you sell this as a service to other refurbishers.
Yeah. So if you were, for example, trading out of, a shop front, and you were refurbishing devices on the side, typically what you would have had to do is have a server set up on your premises, go through the rigmarole of contacting a Microsoft authorized refurbisher and saying, I would like to become a refurbisher too. Then they would have to set it all up, onboard you into the digital operations center. So what we did was we basically said, no, you come onto our website, you sign up, we give you a tool, you can plug that into a device, load Windows, license it, and off you go. And we operate with people doing, a few devices a month, all the way up to people handling thousands of devices.
Interesting. So, yeah, I mean, with the right to repair, this whole repair economy is starting to gain traction. What's interesting is you're building the software layer to further enable that and drive simplification and productivity in that space.
And compliance.
With Microsoft, which I'm sure they like too.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, their kind of ethos is they want to do more with less. And what they mean by that is they want partners that can extend what they already do, but offer something different on top, right? When we look at CSPs, cloud service providers, a lot of them will take stuff that Microsoft offer and they'll add their own level of support service or something like that on top. And they want the same for the MAR program, right? So what we did was we took what they already offer, look how we can improve the processes for other refurbishers, and in this case ourselves as well, and then sell it out there. And
that's super interesting. So where do people find your service capability? Is it like an app in your app store, or is it sitting in other app stores? Where do you find it?
Good question. So we built it as a separate website and a separate web platform. And the reason for that is obviously we didn't want to be seen as a direct competitor. Obviously, we work with a lot of what people could consider competitors. We call them co-opetition.
No, totally.
So, but yeah, it's a separate website. The data sits separately. So Foxway, refurbishers can come to us and know that we're not using their data internally for other Foxway stuff.
Sure. So to create neutrality.
Yeah.
And,
We have to have that wall, right? You have to have that wall.
Yeah, for sure.
The two entities.
Yeah.
So how long ago did you set this up? And how long has it been operating?
I think we're in our third year now. We launched in April a few years back. And since then it's just kind of blown up really. And we're again trying to be the voice between refurbishers and Microsoft. Take what the refurbishers are telling us to try and improve the processes and improve the MAR program overall, so that we can increase the number of benefits that we give to the refurbishers, but also increase the level of product.
Yeah.
Raise like I was saying, raising the bar of.
So do you charge per key?
Yeah, so typically someone comes on our website, they would sign up to become what's called a TPR, which is a third-party refurbisher.
Okay.
Which means they buy the keys through us as like a distributor.
Okay.
Then they would buy the keys, and we have different plans so that we have different features. Like if you want more automation, you kind of pay for that within there. And then you also get discounts on the keys, etc. So we've kind of really
productize this service.
Yeah, for sure. And it's all kind of in real time. And a lot of probably what I talk about when we get technical, and I have to try and not be so technical sometimes, but a lot of what we talk about is sometimes the layer between Microsoft and the refurbisher originally was very complicated and slow. If you wanted to buy keys from a MAR distributor, you would have to talk to them. They would then have to buy the keys from Microsoft. Microsoft then have to fulfill that order. The MAR then has to fulfill that order to the TPR. What we deal with is all in real time. So you buy some keys, they're there for you ready to go, which then means it helps the cash flow of businesses because they come in on a Monday morning and go, I've got 50 devices I need to license this week. Well, guess what? You buy 50 keys. You haven't got to buy 500 to think too far ahead of time.
Just-in-time key delivery.
That is exactly it. But you would think that comes as standard, right? From some of the Microsoft platforms.
Microsoft sometimes is challenged in getting up with the new innovations. The beautiful thing is Microsoft is an ecosystem, it's a platform, and so it has mechanisms to allow third parties to innovate like you have done.
Yeah. And I think they obviously know that they're a big behemoth company, right? And the MAR program to them is a small drop in the ocean. So anything that we can do to feed back and get kind of new things implemented, or even look at where the program's going to be in sort of 5-10 years, is really important to me. And that's what that's what I'm trying to do, is bridge the gap between the refurbishers and Microsoft.
So I want to kind of pick up on what you said, that the authorized refurbish program is a drop in the ocean. Are you seeing that change? Are you seeing growth in this market? And how are you seeing Microsoft's attitude to the refurbished market?
I mean, going back to what I said before about the physical coas, right? You know, there was a lot of foul play, if I'm honest, for some of the key distributors, if you like, because there was no accountability, no traceability for these stickers. So they could have been installed or activated on new machines, right, way back. But now we're at the point where what happened when it went digitally was it put quite a few people off, so they just fell off the program. Microsoft saw a dip. I imagine people at Microsoft maybe got a bit complacent with the program, and then decided to follow the OEM route, which is obviously where all of the new product is coming from. And now I think what Smart has done, without being too big-headed, is kind of brought a new lease of life to the division. And now they're seeing that actually there's so many devices and so much growth that can be had.
Yeah, in fact, that was my next question, which is, I mean, keys are used in many, many, many different types of products. So are you seeing gaming consoles or other types of products being brought in?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we only, for the MAR division, we're only allowed to buy and inject the keys on refurbished devices.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean that a refurbished device has to be enterprise or consumer level. It can be like a gaming device. So, yeah.
Oh, that's quite interesting. I didn't realize you did gaming devices as well. Yeah. So, I mean, in terms of the market for refurbished laptops, are you seeing growth in that in any particular sector?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it goes without saying, we support the social enterprise as well. So Microsoft have a program called the Citizenship Program, and that's where basically the keys that are available under the MAR program are already heavily discounted from retail keys, right? But then the Citizenship Program is another thing that's offered to anyone that would fall under what they would call a TAP, Technology Access Program. So charities, education and stuff like that. So we've seen quite a bit of growth there because obviously there's a lot of support out there for bridging the digital divide.
Yep.
And inclusion and all that great stuff. And then we've also seen growth, massive growth from businesses selling on Amazon, eBay, back market. And I'm at the point now where with Smart, what we really want to do is be integrated and embed with some of these businesses to show that actually it's not just about the hardware. It's not just about, what a device looks like, but also how it operates.
Sure.
That's critical, really. So Ben does webinars, and I sat on one a couple of weeks ago, and well, why didn't you tell the story, right?
Yeah.
Great.
So the analogy, again, that I use, because I love a good analogy, is if I had two devices, if I had two laptops in front of you right now, one was scuffed and one had been cleaned, it had been polished, rubbed down, which device would you take?
Well, the clean one, obviously.
Of course,
Yeah.
9 out of 10 times people would take the clean one. If I opened both devices and switched them both on, and one of them, the webcam didn't work, and let's say in this case, the clean device, the webcam didn't work, the hotkeys weren't disabled, Windows wasn't activated, but the one with the scratches on worked perfect. Now, which one are you taking?
Of course. Buy the other one.
Exactly. So in some ways, the software is way more important than what a device looks
Right,
like.
So functionality
Yeah.
versus aesthetics.
Yeah. And I think aesthetics is the one that a lot of refurbishers have spent years working on.
Oh, I see.
There's lots of skins that you can get for devices, polishing stuff.
Yep.
But now we're getting into the realms of, with Smart, we're trying to make it work.
Yeah,
So,
which is critical, right? Because you need the
Well,
function.
it's not only working, it's working in an authenticated way,
Yep.
right? That has the proper licenses associated.
Yeah, and being able to back that up. If
Right.
someone comes to you and says, is this legit? Are you a legit refurbisher? Yeah, you are. And you can prove that in real time with what we're doing. Having some of that data made available to you, to the partners that you work with, just makes it easier to
So I've been looking because in Europe, there's a lot of discussion around digital product passports.
Mm.
How, is there a relationship at all between these keys and digital product passports? And can this serve as a way for you guys to get into the digital product passport business?
Yeah, so funnily enough, a few years back at one of the Reverse Logistics Association shows in Europe, the ones in Amsterdam, there was a good talk by, and I can't remember the guy's name now, but he was talking about how the digital passports are coming. And I always compare it to the automotive industry. We've had in the UK, we call it an MOT. You have to go every year.
Yep.
They check to make sure you're not driving around with bald tires or bits hanging off your car and all that kind of good stuff.
Inspection process.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's accountability for that. You can go online, anyone can go in, type in the registration plate of a car and see over the last however many years what it passed for, what was failing, what the advisories were. And nothing like that exists yet.
Well, that's part of the reason I'm asking this question, which is...
So, yeah, I think what we're trying to do is build some of that data there so it's ready for when that comes about. But also, I think, again, it's the accountability of the refurbisher. Why would you want to sell a device that you know isn't legit? You're not, you want to be around for the next 10 years. You've got to be doing it right.
Yeah, absolutely. But I also think it's accountability to the user as well, because, certainly of old, I think there was this expectation that if you bought somebody's used laptop, that it comes with all the bells and whistles that the previous user had. And that expectation needs to shift.
Yeah, definitely. Especially considering, what's at the top of everyone's mind at the moment is obviously the sustainability aspect, but also data.
Yeah.
And that's been, obviously the big piece for our industry for many, many years. So when we typically handle a device, any refurbisher should be, well, the first thing they want to do is erasing all that data so there's no trace of anything.
Yeah.
But then you've got the problem of how do you get the tools on there that you need so the next user can use it?
Yeah.
So that's what we're...
Well, just pulling on that, actually. So there are devices that are in the secondary market which can't take current loads of Microsoft 11, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a problem because here we are in the circular economy. Our idea is to keep devices in use for as long as possible.
sure.
So what's happening in and around Windows 10?
Yeah, so I can share this information with you now. I know that Microsoft were very coy about what's happening, rightly so. And we all knew that Windows 11 is going to end, for those of you who don't know, support on October, I think it's the 14th of this year, 2025. So we now know that as of July the 1st this year, if you're operating under the MAR program and you're using Windows 10 keys, from July the 1st, no more.
So what does that mean?
So
does that mean your computer is no longer functional, or if it breaks, there's no way to repair it, or there's no patches coming through on it?
So it's the patches piece, the security, the vulnerabilities. From
So
October,
become more vulnerable, these computers.
yeah. So the push here, and Microsoft's perspective, and I share that view, is that you've got to switch to Windows 11, not because they're forcing you, but because they want you to be secure. They want you to have the latest features and all that stuff, right? But ultimately, the industry that we're in, there are still devices out there that will not support Windows 11. So, and they understand that. And so from October, what they're allowing people to do is say, well, we will support Windows 10 after October, but you will have to pay. And that will mean that for the first year, you'll pay X fee, and then it will double up to 3 years. So, and that will be the end user's responsibility. So the refurbisher won't have to, buy that. It's up to the end user
Well,
to...
it'll also kill the value of those assets.
Unfortunately, yes. But I do think there will still be markets out there for it.
I was just going to ask that, actually, because there are other...
Shred market.
But there are countries, there are economies that, aren't up at the, the newer grade technology.
They'll still be on the hook for paying for...
But will they? Or is it...
Or they just take the risk of running it until they get infected.
Well...
Right.
I mean, a lot of devices that go to some of these countries aren't connected to the internet.
Okay.
So that doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
So there will always be a market, I think.
Imagine running a computer that's not connected to the...
Yeah, I mean, what would you do, right? Nothing's going to work. So
what's the point of it?
Exactly. It's just like you put some data, you store your photos or whatever.
Yeah, but I think the term is emerging markets.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
good. Okay.
So is this a global thing that Microsoft are going to do? It's not just for, the Western markets, the more developed markets. It's a global thing.
You mean for Windows 10?
Yeah.
I mean, globally from October 14th, it will be, you need to either upgrade or pay for the extended support.
Yeah.
Obviously, some people are going to take the risk.
Yeah.
But, some people are still running Windows XP. So what can you do? Yeah.
So where do you get the supply of computers?
For Foxway, anyway, we source from all over.
So
Yeah.
enterprise, individuals,
Exactly.
retailers,
Yep. All of the above.
insurance companies.
Yep.
Wow.
Tell you something that's really interesting. So when I began to set up my consultancy, I wanted to buy a refurbished device. So I went to Apple and I was able to buy a refurbished iPhone. I went to Microsoft. I could not find a refurbished Surface.
Yeah.
I just couldn't. I went to Back Market. Back Market had them. They were, 2 or 3 generations old, but the price of them was equivalent to buying a new one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so in the
That's
end,
the point.
well, in the end, I waited 2 weeks for the new version to come out.
And then it all dropped.
No, and then I bought it.
Thought new.
Yeah, I did.
This is definitely a shift. You got to think in terms of Microsoft's own product line, it's still fairly new.
Yeah.
When you look at the guys who have been around for a very, very long time, they've gone through the pain of knowing, right, well, we need to build these devices to be a bit more circular. And not to say that they're perfect, there's definitely a lot more that needs to be done so that they're more repairable. But with Microsoft specifically, I do know that they are now looking at how can they build product to be refurbished easier in a better way.
I think this is true for Lenovo as well.
Yeah.
They are now, which is kind of the reason why you want to have repair laws and things of this nature, is to incentivize manufacturers to think about the secondary markets.
Yeah, definitely. Especially given that, there's regulation, like in France, for example, where 20% of all product from the public sector anyway must be refurbished devices.
Not just the public sector. So some service providers, OBS, for example,
Yeah.
want 25% of their infrastructure to come from remanufactured or reused sources.
Yeah, and I think that will only spread across Europe, and we'll see something similar across the globe.
The other really interesting thing about France, actually, is they're very much trying to foster localized refurbishment.
Yeah.
So there are incentives to build and to skill up in country.
This goes back to what I was saying, that there's this idea of a repair economy, and how do you nurture that repair economy? And it takes skills, right, to be able to repair these devices.
Well, it takes skills, but it also takes inventory, and access to what you need to refurbish them.
Yeah, and I think as well, when you're looking at repair in country, the reason for not shipping it to the UK or anywhere else within Europe or even anywhere across the globe is because it's got to get on a lorry, it's got to get on a plane, it's got to get on a wherever it needs to go, and that all adds up to cost
And sustainability. Because transportation in particular, is problematic.
And we have something within Foxway, and I'm not too au fait, but I know we call it footprint. But then we also have handprint. And that's all the stuff that we have to do behind the scenes that contribute to the refurbishment of that device.
Yep.
So it's not just parts, it's not just the savings that we've made by taking this device and refurbishing it, but it's also what goes into the refurbishment.
Yep.
How did it get to this point, to the second or third user?
The parts market is interesting as well. To do a refurbishment, you need parts typically, right? So that is growing. So these things are all interconnected.
And that will grow as well with the OEMs as well, being able to contact some of those and stocking those parts.
So if you can share with us, what are you excited about? What are you going to work on next? You've done this amazing new kind of capability that you've introduced. Is there anything else on your radar?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of, everyone looks at a certain process within like the refurbishment like processes, right? We kind of started at the end. How do you get a license on to actually use the software that you've already installed? Then we kind of went a step back. How do you get the software on the device? And now we're looking at who we can partner with to kind of automate some of these processes to get you to that point of installing Windows. Like, I don't know, you've got a technician, and that technician says, right, I'm going to wipe this with an erasure software, and he doesn't need to touch that device again. It goes through an automated workflow of going, yep, now we're going to move on to the imaging of windows because it meets a certain criteria, then the licensing, and that's all kind of a really steady flow. So we're going to partner with some of these guys to build that out. And I think automation is key, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
How about myths?
Yeah.
So we often ask our guests, or we always
ask.
ask our guests.
You're not off the hook.
yeah.
If there's kind of a myth out there that you think it shouldn't be a myth or isn't a myth. Tell us about that.
Yeah, okay, Mythbusters. All right. So I guess when a refurbisher acquires a device, they are acquiring the hardware. And the myth is that they are also acquiring the license for the software. When in fact, what that is an embedded key. And that key does either belong to the original user or the OEM, which is why they call it an OEM key. The myth is that you're not actually allowed to reuse that key if you are refurbishing and reselling that device.
That's a myth.
So, yeah.
You can reuse it.
No, you cannot. Yeah, so that's why we kind of stepped in and are kind of educating users around when you need to use a key.
So the refurbished price is the combination of the hardware and the software.
Correct. Yeah.
Super interesting. Well, Ben, thank you for spending your time with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Why don't you tell our listeners and viewers how we find you, where you are?
Sure. So smartdpk.com. You can find us on there. Reach out to me anytime, or you can email me directly, ben@smartdpk.com. If you just want to chat, if you want questions about licensing, you want a demo of what we can do, reach out anytime.
Oh, that's
Fantastic.
great.
Yes. So everybody, thank you for joining All Things Circular and another really fascinating episode.
Absolutely. I'm loving this. I need to find another Brit for the next one.
Well, you're doing a good job so far. So
Thanks,
everybody. Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in. Please head over to allthingscircular.com to learn more.